TV8, first on Guam.
KUAM News, winner of the 2022 Regional Edward R. Murrow Award for Excellence in Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Culture Club.
KUAM News Hotspot is brought to you by
Pacific Points, Do More, Get More, and Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
The Menu, brought to you by King's Restaurant, always open, always local, and Ruby Tuesday Guam, home of the Fresh Garden Bar.
It's no secret that Governor Leon Guerrero plans to build a massive medical complex at Eagles Field, but some have criticized a lack of transparency over the billion-dollar project. Speaker Therese Terlahi has introduced a pair of measures designed to provide more checks and balances. One mandates that all meetings regarding the medical campus be announced and the minutes made public. Another bill requires legislative approval for GovGuam to sign any land leases with the federal government for more than a 5-year term.
People of Guam are entitled to hear the deliberations that are taking place when these decisions are being made, particularly the landowners, to hear the deliberation when Eagles Field was decided to be the first priority or the first preference for land, instead of them finding out in the newspaper or some of the news media.
Terlahi's bill also taps GEDA as the lead agency. CEO and Administrator Melanie Mendiola.
Where the transparency crosses over to micromanagement is where I take issue with the bill.
GEDA recently announced a new website to keep the public informed. We spoke with Mendiola in a separate interview ahead of the public hearing. That discussion coming up. And Hafaday, and welcome. We are joined by the CEO and Administrator of the Guam Economic Development Authority, but she is also the lead on the medical campus project that the governor is strongly pushing right now, Melanie Mendiola. Thanks for joining us, Mel.
Thank you. Hafaday, Nestor.
Hafaday, yes. So we recently received the announcement that the medical campus website and information hub has been posted online. Can we start there? Tell us a little bit more about this website and all the information that is going to be available.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Nestor. For the last couple of years, there have been a number of meetings taking place, stakeholder meetings and kind of working group meetings. And so most of those meetings, if you can imagine, were still held during various forms of COVID lockdowns and people meeting via Zoom. So we were fortunate to have all those meetings available via Zoom, recorded, as well as notes posted. So what we started doing was we started posting everything on the GEDA website. So we just dedicated a portion of our space to the GEDA website. But then what became readily apparent was that there was just too much stuff. And as you're well aware, GEDA does a lot of other things other than the medical campus. And so we said this really warrants this project, the scope, the scale of this project really warrants its a dedicated website. And so that was the impetus behind putting the website up and then loading it with all the information. We thought a great time to roll it out would be when we were in receipt of the medical action plan. And so we received some monies from the Office of Economic Adjustment about a year and a half ago to do a medical action plan. This is an update from a plan that was done years ago along the same lines to assess the current state of our healthcare community. And so what we wanted to do, we said, hey, that might be a really good time because this is a pretty, it's a pretty serious doc. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of information, a lot of graphics. And so we said this would be a good time to launch our new website so that people can interact with all this information as they'd like to.
All right. I want to talk a little bit more about the action plan a little bit later, but I want to continue to focus on the website. So what is the website address, by the way?
GuamMedicalCampus.com.
Okay. And so they can navigate through that, and what will be some of the things that they're going to be finding. I noticed for when we went through it that there was a nice aerial kind of graphic portrait of the portrayal of the facility itself?
Right, on the landing page, you'll see a very preliminary sort of conceptual of the medical campus. But in addition, you'll also see meeting notes, meeting minutes from previous meetings. So you can see what sorts of discussion and discourse had taken place. The medical action plan, of course, which is a number of different links addressing a number of different subject areas from medical services, an assessment of the Army Corps of Engineers 2019. Actually, you'll find the Army Corps of Engineers 2019 study. So just a lot of resources. But what is probably the most significant is once you go to the website, you do all your homework and the history, periodically you can come back to our website and check it out for any announcements. We'll probably do any RFP issuances, such as a project management office or project manager type of RFP. That type of RFP would go out on the website, or community meetings, other stakeholder types of meetings. As you're well aware, the governor introduced the Land Bank Reform Act last year, and that is not necessarily 100% related to the medical campus, but the medical campus certainly stirred the sense of urgency to issue this type of legislation or to amend the law such that ancestral owners could get some fair compensation. And so with that, we'll even put some updates like that on the website. And so really it's a great place just to get up to date information, and as well as historical resources and the archives of the work that's taken place over the course of the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know there's going to be some FAQs on there, but will the public be able to submit questions, for example? Will they be able to interact with you folks?
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. GEDA is, we've in many government projects, GEDA plays the home for trying to organize information and trying to send it out to the proper channels. So it's meant that usually something pertaining to land, what went into site selection, how did that go? Yeah, tell me what you did in this regard, those are the sorts of things that perhaps land management might answer. They might be the expert. Other areas, GMH might be the expert. And so GEDA is managing the website, so we can kind of, on behalf of the Office of the Governor, so we can kind of channel your questions in the proper direction or feedback.
All right, so we're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more of our discussion with GEDA CEO and Administrator Melanie Mendiola. We're talking about the medical campus. We'll be right back.
The KUAM Care Force, with the support of Trust J. Goodman, presents the Giving Every Tuesday Spark series. Weekly this March and April, our Giving Tuesday Spark Youth Ambassadors focus on youth community events, personal stories of giving, and building awareness for different causes and events through their eyes and in their own words. The Giving Every Tuesday Spark Series Tuesdays, this March through April, on KUAM News Primetime and on our digital platforms. Get all your beverages delivered from the Bottle Shack on the UnoGo app and website. Whether you're watching the big game, celebrating a milestone, or just want to unwind at home, we got you. Delivering spirits, soft drinks, beer, ice, and more right to your front door. Check out our Instagram page for monthly specials and giveaways. The Bottle Shack on UnoGo. The fast, safe, and responsible way to enjoy life. Must be 21 and older to order. Delivery is limited to certain villages. Visit uno-go.com or download the app today. Drink responsibly.
All right, everyone, we are back with GEDA CEO and Administrator Melanie Mendiola talking about the medical campus. Mel, well, you mentioned earlier that the medical campus action plan has been released. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, we're calling it the MAP for short. Medical Action Plan. Yes, so the Medical Action Plan that went up on the website, it's a pretty extensive set of documents. There's a project management plan, there's a finance strategy, medical services delivery plan, there's an assessment of all the different types of reports that have come out over the last 10 years or so. It's a report of to some extent, there's a report that's a report of reports. There's also a reuse white paper, and I believe there's some master plan type. There's a lot of master plan type information in the medical action plan.
All right. And so finance strategy is one of the things that is included in there. And that's, of course, the most important question to a lot of people, especially in the legislature, how you're going to finance this project. I know the governor has set aside at one time some millions of dollars. Tell us where we are in terms of the financing, and then what is the strategy going forward for paying for this, and what might be the price tag ultimately.
Sure. So what's really important of a medical campus. So the medical campus that is envisioned by our governor is a medical campus that co-locates the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, Public Health, and Guam Memorial Hospital. Of course, Guam Memorial Hospital has an urgent need for replacement. So that's really kind of that's the first thing that we're looking at with regard to financing. So much of the infrastructure money that comes in. So the first, actually, let me correct myself. The first two projects are going to be a lab and like what is it called? A CDC, a biosafety lab. The first project is a biosafety lab that's 100% grant funded. And the second project is the Guam Memorial Hospital. But with regard to both of those projects, there's a significant amount of infrastructure work that's going to need to be done in the area. Some of it can already, so I believe with the construction of the lab, we can utilize the existing grid, the existing water hookups. With the rest of the the next phase, which is the hospital, there's certainly going to be a need for upgrades. And so the money that was set aside by the governor under the American Rescue Plan is primarily for the pre-construction types of expenses, and as well as infrastructure types of expenses. The legislature also authorized an approximate, I believe it's $35 million a year. So depending on the interest rate, we'll see where that takes us as far as the total aggregate amount that's able to be borrowed, probably in the $600 million range. And so the assessment that was done by the Army Corps of Engineers in 2019 put the price tag at about 700 million, I believe it was, for the replacement of GMH. Interestingly enough, a fix of GMH by the Army Corps of Engineers was assessed to be more expensive. Nonetheless, the replacement of GMH. But at the same time, we don't want to forget that there's quite a bit of work that the administration is doing to layer various sources of financing. So for example, there's been an expressed desire for the Veterans Administration to house like a veterans clinic. So there could be some that's federally funded under the VA. There could be some that's federally funded under the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, specifically with regard to the widening of any road of Route 15, or putting an access road in another part of the property. And so that's where right now, that's what we're paying a lot of attention to, is the cost associated with the any kind of infrastructure work.
I know that the legislature had also worked on some bills to fund the hospital or the medical campus project going forward. What is the status of that?
So the bill, I believe, well, the public law has been passed, so the money is pledged. However, what we do need first is going to be similar to our high schools, where there's a design and then design, bid, build, right? Similar to that, what we'd be doing with the stages that we'd be going through first would be first a design, and then bid it out, and then build. And usually at the stage with which we'd be going after the $35 million a year financing would be when we're ready to build.
Right. And so are you confident, the administration is confident that all of the money that will be needed to cover the costs of this medical campus will be available in the ensuing years?
I think one thing that we can all be, I think one thing that we've all historically observed is in the last, let's say 5 to 7 years, the cost of building has gone up. That started with the shortage of workers. If you recall, H-2B visa workers were in very short supply right around 2017, 2018. Governor Leon Guerrero and the team have worked really hard to ease up the H-2B situation such that H-2B visa holders can work both inside the fence as well as outside the fence with defense aligned projects, which this is. So we believe that the supply of workers should be fine. Of course, we can't speak for the increasing costs of raw materials and raw goods, or the geopolitical situation going on in Russia and Ukraine and how that affects oil prices and so on and so forth. But we did factor in, that's something as we continue to plan, we continue to plan for contingencies. But in addition to that, there continues to be this is where there really needs to be an active advocacy towards funding out of federal funding out of DC, and as well as more local funding only if necessary. But also just being prudent. We can't just build the house of our dreams. We just don't have if we don't have a budget for that, right? You build what you can afford.
Yeah, and so there might be some changes, I guess, modifications down the road, I suppose, depending on.
Right. One thing I do want to point out, though, is that one of the sole purpose of co-locating these multiple facilities and not putting currently public health rents all over the island. Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness, they're bursting at the seams, and Guam Memorial Hospital has one serious parking problem, in addition to all the structural problems that we're all well aware of. One thing that can occur with a consolidated site is shared spaces for training, shared spaces for meetings, shared pharmacy, and so on and so forth. So there is some savings to be derived out of co-locating these multiple facilities. Whether or not the savings are going to be realized in the short term or more long-term type of approach is really where we need to kind of assess that today.
All right, we're going to take another short break, and when we come back, I'll ask you a little bit more about the campus itself and the co-location and the idea, the strategy behind that. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
We're celebrating your special day every day with Cold Stone Creamery. Register your loved one for the Cold Stone Creamery Birthday Club. Email a photo, name, and birth date to birthdayclub@KUAM.com by noon on weekdays and by noon on Friday for weekend birthdays. Include a special message and we'll read it on air weeknights during KUAM News. Cross your fingers on Friday. You could be the lucky winner of a Cold Stone Creamery ice cream cake, and the lucky nominator will receive a personal treat from Cold Stone Creamery. The Birthday Club is presented by KUAM and Cold Stone Creamery.
All right, we're back with GEDA CEO and Administrator Mel Mendiola. We're talking about the medical campus and the medical campus website that just went up. Mel, before the break, we talked about the campus itself, and you mentioned the fact that it will be co-located with the hospital, public health, and GBWIC with the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. What's the idea behind that?
Right. So the idea behind it was, I believe there was some inspiration drawn from medical campuses all around the world that we see. But I think some of this was very aspirational. We said, let's, in some of the planning, there was this idea that, it's located near the university in Guam Community College, so there could be training that occurs. A teaching campus type of situation, a teaching hospital, a teaching public health type of facility. But the main driver behind co-locating these facilities was much less aspirational and more about what the reality of today's medical situation is. Today, public health had a main facility in Manila that was severely damaged by a fire. Now public health services are spread throughout the island, including right here at the ITC building where GEDA is located. And they're renting, and it can be difficult for folks to have access to all of these different services. With regard to Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, we see the expanded services that have to do with suicide prevention, also with veterans health and veterans behavioral health, right? And so the idea behind co-locating these facilities specifically with the Guam Memorial Hospital was the ability to share talent, the ability to share human resources, but the ability as well to share capital resources. And I had mentioned stuff like things like a training site, conference sites, and even things just as simple as a cafeteria or dining type of establishment. And it's also, again, it is close to the University of Guam. And so ample opportunities, and GCC, so ample opportunities for nearby training. And so that was all kind of what went into the vision for a medical campus. And then from there, we assessed, the team assessed what size of property might be needed. And then from there, a site was, we looked at, evaluated various sites. And that's all articulated on the website in the medical action plan.
Yeah. There are skeptics or critics of the campus idea. One of the things that they say are like, the parking for one, the congestion of having all of the patients and relatives and family and what have you all try to get to one spot for 3 different agencies. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think that any expansion in infrastructure is meant to improve the lives of not only of the hospital and its users, or the public health and its users, but also for the surrounding geography, the surrounding areas currently planned in Manila. For those who are kind of like upset about a parking situation, they should go to GMH today and assess the parking situation and see if it's very convenient and easy. It's not. And the same, I would argue, goes for Guam Behavioral, and the same I would argue goes for public health. Having said that, I think that there's been much in the way of planning as far as how to address congestion, but also how to efficiently make sure there's enough room for parking, how to make sure there's enough room for different types of services, not to all be concentrated where there are all kinds of bottlenecks on one part of the campus or one part of the road on Route 15, right? And so there's quite a bit of planning already being done to address, to allay concerns along those lines.
Okay, so that sort of thing that's going to be taken into account, like maybe multi-level parking, a parking structure, that is going to be part of this master plan.
Potentially, yes. Especially if there becomes, currently the plan is for potentially 3 government agencies. But in the event there are public-private partnerships with, say, small clinics and things along those lines, that'll certainly become a need. And so the plan for the medical campus is to launch in phases, right? And so there is some time there is this whole, this hospital, public health, Guam Behavioral, they're all not going up in a year or 2, all right? We're starting with the lab, next is the hospital, next is likely to be public health, and then finally Guam Behavioral and any other ancillary agencies and services. And so between phases, there's time to really assess and troubleshoot what might be ways to address any issues that may arise.
All right, we're going to talk more about the land, which is the biggest controversy surrounding this proposal, the Eagles Field, which is currently, I believe, owned by the military, but we'll get to that right after this break.
21's MVP, nobody like me. Blessings, 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 all come from life lessons. Wanna know what's next? Keep guessing. Go time, no time for questions. Throw chakra on, show off. Stepping out slow-mo, you can see the glow up light.
All right, we're back, everyone, talking with GEDA CEO and Administrator Melanie Mendiola about the medical campus plans. And Mel, as we said before the break, one of the most controversial aspects of this whole proposal is the land itself, Eagles Field. Original landowners have come out in public hearings and spoken, and you were there, of course, spoken about how they want the land back and how the military took it from them, how it was promised. The expectation was that if it was going to be returned, it needs to be returned to the original landowners and not to the government of Guam. Can you just dive into that whole situation and explain it from your vantage point?
Sure. Well, I'd like to start by saying that the original landowners have never left the minds of this administration, and most especially the mind and the heart of Governor Leon Guerrero. With regard to original landowners, when we were assessing sites for a medical campus, we had specific size requirements, and the governor reached out to the Department of the Navy and said, I'm interested in building a hospital. Is there any federal land that you might consider returning to us for this very purpose? And at the time, I do not believe Eagles Field was not listed as excess. However, we do believe it was highly underutilized, but that wasn't actually a property that she was specifically eyeing and saying, I want Eagles Field and that's where I want to build my house. That's not what happened. She said, I need property. Here is a list of all these underutilized properties. Is there anything that, can you give me, can you give me this amount of acreage? And the Department of the Navy came back and they basically said, we'd like to go ahead and offer to lease you these particular sites. And one of the sites was located very close to GRMC. That wasn't really solving the problem of accessibility because it was so close to GRMC. And I think both of the other alternative sites were up near GRMC. And then the site in Manila. Now, at the time, because there were ancestral owners of record, but at the time, the word was that it was going to be a lease, it was not going to be a return. And if it was going to be a return, there continues to be a federal law that prohibits a government from transferring directly to original owners. We can only do, I think the governor we can stand beside these original owners and say, we will fight for you to get your land back. But to start, this land was not on the list of lands to be returned. And even if it was on the list of lands to be returned, we'd still have to amend federal law. Now, all of those things are a very long process, an arduous process. There does not appear to be an appetite right now to do to undertake such an action by Congress. This could very well change with ongoing continued advocacy over the next several years. And I think that that's the desire, is for the governor to work with Congress to change so that land that comes back to the government of Guam end up where it should, which is in the hands of the people of Guam. But until that time comes, we still have a situation where we're in desperate need of a new hospital. And so the decision was made to press forward with the medical campus, but along with that, because of these specific owners of the Eagles Field site, the governor said, let's what's going on with Guam Ancestral Lands Commission, and should they not be receiving some kind of compensation in this situation? And when we looked at the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission's not enabling legislation, but like their rules and regs and things like that, we said these guys are not their hands they're not, they don't have access to this Guam Ancestral Lands Land Bank Trust monies. And we need to fix that. We need to open up the land bank so that people like the ancestral owners of Eagles Field can have access to money. No, it's not their original land, but it is compensation. And the governor is proposing what she proposed last year with the Land Bank Reform Act of 2022 was compensation valued at the market value of the land at the time of the transfer to the government of Guam. So what that means is not 1965 valuations or whenever it was taken away, but 2022 valuations or 2023 valuations when it's coming back. And so I think by and large, the number of times that we've met, so the governor's been meeting with the ancestral owners. There are a number of them that are very, very vocal at the legislature, and that's their right. We 100% understand where they're coming from. But when they come and they meet with the governor, there is an openness and an appreciation for the governor trying to find justice. But sometimes we just sometimes we just have that feeling. I appreciate all that you're doing. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to find me compensation. I just want my land. And that's something I don't think that we'll ever get past, but we certainly can try to do our best to help. And of course, we have to look out for all the people of Guam and the medical needs of our island at large.
Okay, really quickly, only got about a minute left. What is the status of the land lease from the military?
Yes, there's been a number of drafts that have been back and forth with us in the Navy. And the Navy is currently, I believe it's currently, the ball is in their court as far as review and eventual signature.
All right. Thank you very much. Melanie Mendiola is the CEO and administrator of the Guam Economic Development Authority. She's also part of the lead agency for the medical campus. Thanks for joining us, Mel.
Thank you. You take care, Nestor.
All right. I'm Nestor Licanto. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you again next week on The Hub.